Hello and welcome to the show. This is the Mary Grace Show, and I am Mary Grace, the voice of sanity to help you navigate politics, culture, wellness, faith, and world events. And I have with me today a special friend, a real friend of the show, a friend of MAGA, a friend of freedom. And this is our friend Boone Cutler. Boone is a veteran of our military. He has been through some things. He has helped uh, he's a writer and also an advocate, not just for veterans, but for Americans. And I'm really happy to have Boone here today because one of his areas of expertise is information, the information space, information warfare, and especially how that affects your mind. And because we're going through so much right now collectively, as we have all of these disclosures, this is a great day for us to have a conversation with Boone. Boone, welcome to the show. It's really good to have you here.
It's my pleasure to be back. Thank you very much.
So, Boone, we were talking off air a little bit, and one of the things that I'm seeing with people across the board in the conservative space, in particular, people who elected Donald Trump to be president, there is a whole basket full of emotions that I see playing out every single day across real life and social media. On any given day, you have celebration, you have relief, you have surprise, you have shock, you have awe, you have what would I say, like complete and total surprise. You have anger to the point of rage. There's the whole gamut of emotions. And this is an area that you specialize in. And I wanted to get your take on this um, because we've got a long road ahead of us. And, it's hard to go through that range of emotions in a week's time, much less on a daily basis or an hour by hour basis. So, what can you tell us about the processes that are playing out and how you see people reacting and responding and how people can get through this?
I think, well, first of all, I want to commend, the administration on being so prepared, this time, when Donald Trump took office. Being prepared is such a huge thing. And, I'm sure there were lessons learned from the last time they did, when he took office. And I'm sure there were lessons learned from the transition and lessons learned from, just the picking of a cabinet, how to manage the cabinet. I think, but from what I'm looking at, you see Cash, you see Pete, you see Tulsi, these are people that do not have divided loyalties. And that's important. I think that there were problems in the last cabinet because they had divided loyalties within the agencies that Trump wanted to reestablish, to
Hmm.
go through them, to make them more legitimate. There were divided loyalties, and I don't think he's going to deal with those types of problems this time, at least not in the same way. So, he's picking people, and even though folks are going to say, well, they're an outsider, they don't have any experience in this, they don't have this, they don't
Hmm.
have that. Well, in this phase, this is really not about that. It's about getting fresh eyes on a problem and being able to
Hmm.
identify where the problems are, and then being able to rectify the problems without the without the pushback from those divided loyalties within those agencies. As far as people, I mean, gosh, there's no other word to use but blitzkrieg. There's so much
Hmm.
that has happened in such a compressed amount of time that I think everybody's head is spinning. People wonder, does Donald Trump even sleep? Is Elon even sleep? He's got his people out there,
Yeah.
bed down in the agencies and institutions that they're working in, because they have to get to, and I think that sense of urgency comes from, the sooner we get all the bleeding stopped, the sooner we can rebuild. And I think there is a
Yeah.
timeline on that, because when you leave gaps, then you're going to have good people get caught in those gaps, and there's going to be other problems. So as people are going through this and they're seeing this is act one. This is a 4-act play,
Hmm.
and we're in act one right now. Um, So expect more of the same, but then expect the fact that there's going to be a rebuilding phase, and that rebuilding phase is going to be much different. You know, obviously you got Elon involved. There'll be a technological aspect to it. There'll be an AI aspect to it. Look what JD Vance said at this AI symposium that they had,
Hmm.
just yesterday. Um, I think there's going to be a complete restructuring for efficiency based on a technological platform that we have not seen before. And does it make
Mm.
sense? Yes, it makes sense. And are there some archaic things that have been going on that just are not going to measure up to the speed and efficiency that they can today? Absolutely. So this is a renaissance period that you're looking at right now. The renaissance being, combining the old and the new. We're looking at a governmental renaissance in the United States happening right now, and I think it's going to happen in other countries as well. We've seen this renaissance period happening by the elevating of populist movements around the world. And I think that's all very positive because it takes a network to defeat a network. And if you're trying to defeat this globalist Marxist agenda, what it takes countries standing up with populist movements that care about their country's sovereignty.
Hmm.
And that's a lot about what General Flynn and I have been writing about all these years, or the last couple of years. And I think that's going to continue. So you're in the renaissance, just be prepared for that. We haven't seen what's new yet. We are just in that
Hmm.
transition phase of what's old and what's new. So in this time, it's important that you protect your mind, you control your emotions. You're using good tech hygiene, good tech discipline. There is a time just to turn it off and go water the tomatoes, or take a walk around the block, or hang out with your family. And I encourage everybody to do that. If you're not taking like no tech weekends with your spouse, at least occasionally, you should probably consider that. That's a good thing. Hey, we're just going to turn everything off and be with each other, and,
Hmm.
and, and maintain our personal connections with the people that we love. I don't think there's too many other things right now that people really can do. I mean, when you're sitting back on social media and you're just watching this flurry all day and all night, and got to push this out, got to push out, got to make a
Yeah.
comment about this. At some point in time, I think we all come to the realization that it's hectic, and we're manifesting our own environment that's hectic when we
Hmm.
choose to do that. And we got to step
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you've packed so much into what you just said there. And one thing I wanted to ask you quickly. So you're talking about establishing a new infrastructure for efficiency and accountability, and this is going to hinge a lot on tech and AI. But one of the things that I've noticed in this country, and nobody, you can't help but notice, is a degradation of our physical infrastructure, and this it's a big problem. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about this. It's a little bit of a departure, but as you mentioned this, the AI and the efficiency, what do you think? Like, do you think we're gonna forget that in the process, or are we also going to be see a rebuilding uh, at the under the leadership of one of the greatest builders in the world? What do you think we're going to see from a
I, th-
physical
I think it'll
infrastructure
be a
standpoint?
hybrid. I think it'll be all of the above. I think
Okay.
yeah, I think that, we're going to have some growing pains. We are going to see some, things happening in the physical domain. I mean, look at the border. I would not be surprised at all if things with the CCP and the cartels and everything is, I don't think they're going to give up that line of effort, coming across the
Hmm.
border. So
Yeah.
at some point in time, we may see some advanced, military techniques along the border. I would not put it out of the realm of reality that there's some
Hmm.
sort of, or some variants of a demilitarized zone along the border that's patrolled, by aircraft, things like that. I
Hmm.
put out that last week. I mean, Spectre gunship runs are very, very effective, and they're very targeted. There's limited collateral damage if it's done properly. All these things can, and psychologically, it has a very psychological detrimental effect to the adversary. When AC-130 gunships are flying over and they start, neutralizing targets and equipment that they're using,
Yeah.
it's a pretty pretty impressive psychological effect, and there's nothing they can counter that. I mean, they can buy Humvees, and they can, buy automatic weapons, and they can recruit people, and they can beat on their chest. But if you've never really seen what happens when an AC-130 gunship is on station and does what it does, there's no way they're going to be able to counter that. And so I hope it doesn't get to that level, but I would not dismiss that, those options are on the table. Pete has
Mhm.
already said the military options are on the table for,
Yeah.
cartels in Mexico. They've already been labeled a terrorist organization. So
Mhm.
that really, frees up a lot of options. Uh, other physical, structures that we're seeing. What were you talking about specifically when you're talking about degradation of structures?
Well, I mean, our airports, our roads, it's just, pretty much everything, we're seeing the fraud, waste, and abuse that is,
Hmm.
rampant in all of these agencies. We just found out today, billions, missing from Medicaid, billions missing from Medicare. We haven't even gotten into the transportation department. We haven't even gotten into all of the allocation of funding that goes from the federal government to the states. Like in Virginia, we call it VDOT, but it's a lot of federal money. But the work just doesn't get done.
Hmm.
And so I would say that, and President Trump has talked about this, that when it comes to the physical infrastructure of our nation, we are a failing nation. The air, like any, I don't know if you fly, I fly. Last time I was in Charlotte Airport, it's just it's like being at a bus terminal. I mean, first of all, it's too small, it's cramped, it's crowded, everything is falling apart. It hasn't been upgraded in who knows how long. And then, you fly an airline like Air Emirates, and it's a completely opposite experience. And you do a layover in one of those countries, and you feel like you're in a completely different century, like
You
centuries ahead.
you go from the UAE, okay, to Chicago O'Hare International, and
Yeah,
I've done it, and I hate to say it, but you're disgusted by your own country.
that's
Um,
what I'm saying.
it,
Yeah.
it is dirty, it is filthy, it is run down. The other thing that you talked about, the roads on General Fund's tour, I had the privilege and the wonderful opportunity to travel across the
Mhm.
country twice. First we went across the lower section of the country, then we came
Yeah.
across the northern section of the country, and then we came down the center of it. And the roads are absolutely crap.
Yep.
There's a lot of spots, in these interstates that are just completely, they're not satisfactory to what we should be representing ourselves as a country. If you go to Germany and you're on the Autobahn, it's rare you'll see a pothole. It just doesn't happen. And they travel at very high speeds. It's very
Yep.
efficient. It's very clean. And we can do that too. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
traveling through Europe in different places, and to get gas, you don't have to get off on a side street, go find a gas station, and fight your way back, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You've got rest spots that you can get gas, you get something to eat. They even got a
Mhm.
restaurant. It's very, very
Yep.
efficient to
Yeah.
travel that way. And I was doing that back in the 90s,
Yeah. That's what I'm
in Europe.
saying. Yeah, exactly. And so that's a big problem. And I understand that Trump has to prioritize. I know, like you're saying, stop the bleeding. We have to close the border. We have to stop the spending. We have to get these things under control, with these different agencies. And this is what Doge is doing. And Doge has a limited lifespan intentionally, to get through what they're supposed to do. I really want, I mean, I think I'm not alone when I say that I want our country to thrive, and I want our country to be, not just catching up to the 21st century. We're a quarter of a century in, and we have infrastructure that has not been upgraded for 100 years in this
Yep.
country. Plus, you combine that with the crime. Nobody wants to get on the subway in any major city in this country right now
Nope.
because of the crime and the filth. And I understand that there are parts of Europe, I mean, in Paris, when you go through Les Halles, it's like it smells like urine. Okay, so Europe's not perfect either, but
Right, right.
but
Absolutely not.
right, but we have an overall crumbling infrastructure in this country, and that's what I'm talking about. There are, for example, the broadband money that the last administration was allocated a lot of, like, in the billions, to fix and implement rural broadband and communications, internet. And I think they put in like one tower. I mean, it was insane. Like, the money did not get spent on internet. And then you look at what happened during Hurricane Helene. Elon Musk had to go in with Starlink to get the communications up and running. And here's something else that nobody really talked about during that emergency, is that FEMA was supposed to do that. That's FEMA's job. And here's how I know that. My stepdad, that we take care of now, he was with FEMA for his civil service career. And his job was to go with the first wave of responders. So he was like a first responder. He was always had a go bag. And the minute there was a disaster, he was out the door on a plane at that disaster, setting up communications. And so the fact that the emergency medical, the EMS, the first responders, they didn't have communications. People could not get 911. That was FEMA's job, and it wasn't done.
No,
So, I
I
mean,
was out. I was out there. I
yeah,
responded to that
yeah,
tragedy, and
yeah,
I could speak to it, directly. FEMA did such a poor job on the onset that, especially people in Appalachia, they're kind of like, you know what, screw me, screw you. Like, I don't even want you around here now.
yeah,
And
exactly.
that's going to be a wound that's going to take a lot to heal. It's just going to
Yeah,
take a lot to heal that. And we would be trying to coordinate things between one group of people and another group of people, and there's not cellular service, there's not landline,
yeah,
there's nothing. So in order to just make a decision, you'd have to drive, and the roads are screwed up, so you got to drive
yeah.
45 minutes to 2 hours, find somebody, physically find them,
Hmm.
have a little bit of a conversation, get a little bit of a plan together, and then, go back to where you came from. And now you're doing this courier method for just to be able to converse. And it
Yeah,
was it was very, very difficult. And I could only imagine all that could have been better if just that aspect wasn't there. And we were dropping off Starlinks to people, and we were, sourcing these things to get the communications back up. So it's,
yeah,
I agree with you that that is something that could have been. And you're talking about, broadband. Why are we talking about broadband? Like, that's like so 80s,
hmm,
isn't it? Isn't that like so 80s? Like, there's not, we're digging holes and putting in why. I mean, I don't get that.
yeah,
I think we're beyond that now.
hmm,
And so, I think when we're talking about infrastructure, I think updating with technology is going to be a big deal about it. And I mean, come on, I co-wrote the book to How to Fight Artificial Intelligence, but there's the set we start out in
yeah,
that book saying, hey, there's AI is good and it can be bad, and let's
hmm,
talk about both. And we did talk about both.
yeah,
So it
yeah.
was very, as far as, now we've got this public fund that can earn money that Trump has set up. I think
The
that's a deal.
sovereign wealth. Yeah, the
The
sovereign wealth
sovereign
fund.
the sovereign wealth fund. I think that's going to help us out a lot. I think a lot of money that's going to certain places that don't have a return on investment, I think it's going to be thrown into stuff like that, and that's really long term for the United States. So
Yeah.
he's got a lot of balls in the air right now. And I think
Hmm.
we would be foolish to think that some of those balls won't get missed, because they will. But,
Hmm.
are we going to accomplish at the end of the day? Are we going to put more points on the board than we lose? And I think we do. I think we will. And I
Right.
think I think nationally, I think the American people have the the intestinal fortitude to go through those pains, because it's unsustainable. I mean, our country,
Hmm.
we're going to bankrupt
Hmm.
ourselves, and then everything
Yeah.
that we're going to lose everything anyway. So why not, stop the bleeding now, take a little bit of
Hmm.
pain, get it right, and then we can move forward, with some sort of
Yeah.
confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a good moment for us to segue, because you mentioned the word pain. And I think there's a lot of pain that people are experiencing at some of these at some of the exposures of what's been happening. I want to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll pick up on that, because you have such good insight and advice about how to handle the emotions that people are going through. Very quickly, I want to remind my listeners that one of the things that we do here is we stay in touch with you, and we work with America First Partners. And one of the ways to find that is to go to my website, marygracemedia.com, marygracemedia.com. You can click on the shopping tab and you can get connected to a lot of our partners there. One of our favorite partners is our friends over at griddownchowdown.com. They have freeze-dried beef. And the scene that we just described, where people had no power, no internet, really hardly any way to do anything. This is a perfect example of when you would want something like this. This is freeze dried. It's not jerky. You just add clean water, and you can cook real beef. And this is American. It's American grown. It's American harvested, American processed. And when you buy it, you're helping to save American farmland. Right now, they're giving a special for all Mary Grace Show listeners. If you use the promo code Mary Grace, when you do a subscription, you do a monthly subscription of 24 servings, you're going to get 4 free servings. And you just go over to their website, griddownchowdown.com. We're going to check out their ad quickly, and we're also going to look at our friends at Synapse. We've got to protect our health. Boone always says, protect your mind, control your emotions. You got to protect your health too. So we'll be right back. We're going to take a look at these partners, and we'll be right back and to talk more about actually protecting your own mind and your emotions. Be right back.
Hello, I'm Jordan, and this is my brother.
And I'm Nace, and we're at the Grid Down Chowdown, and this is Larry, who is a local rancher that we've partnered with.
Now, Larry, you've been ranching for over 4 generations, is that correct?
That's correct. I'm 3rd generation, my son's 4th generation, and I've got some grandkids that are 5th generation.
Man, that's awesome.
We've been here for quite a while, yeah.
All right, now, Larry, your cattle is grass-fed, grass-finished, and pasture-raised, just like God intended them to be.
Yes, because I want to know what's in that animal,
Right.
What it's been fed. And so the only way to do that is for us to keep it all natural, just like God has done it for years and years and years, thousands of years. How has partnering up with us helped you and your ranch? Well, it's allowed us to develop a market that we didn't have before, one that can get directly to the consumer, and that's great.
And just remember, more importantly, with every package that you buy, we put a salvation track in there. So from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you for allowing us to do what we believe that God has us here to do. And just remember, God loves you. He really does.
Amen.
Go to Grid Down. Americans spend more now than ever on healthcare, and we're sicker than almost anybody in the world. We've put our trust in a system that's completely let us down. Dr. Troy Sproul and the team at Synapse Center for Health and Healing have changed all that. They are a functional medicine clinic, and they get to the root cause of what's made you sick in the first place. Once they do that, they give you solutions to help you get out of that. This is the way that medicine was meant to be practiced, and this is what they're doing. They're changing the entire system from the inside out, one person at a time, and you could be one of those people. And so when you're working with the team at Synapse, they're giving you solutions and not just prescriptions. That's a game changer for me. When you set up a free discovery call with Synapse, you're starting on a journey of healing. You're starting on a journey of getting answers. And that's why I've partnered with them, because I want you to be healthy. I want your family to be healthy. I want you to have all of the resources that you need to steward the body and the health that God's given you. Go to officialsynapse.com and tell them Mary Grace sent you. That's Official Synapse, SYNAPSE. And we are back. So don't forget, if you go to griddownchowdown.com and you do a subscription, monthly subscription, 24 servings of this amazing stuff. This is like freeze-dried gold, basically. You do a free subscription, promo code Mary Grace, you will get 4 free servings. Don't forget to do that. Support our America First partners and help protect American farmland. So we are back here with Boone Cutler, and I wanted to talk specifically about pain because one of the things that I've experienced, and I think everybody has experienced, is we're getting these disclosures every single day about the ways that our money has been spent. And it's become very clear to me that this is not accidental. This isn't just, oh, hey, forgot to balance the checkbook this month, balance the check for $100. This is intentional, deceptive, years long abuse of the people. And it's kind of like finding out that your spouse of 25 years has been a serial gambler, drinker, adulterer, psychological abuser, gaslighter, all of that. And then you go through, it's like you found the stash in the house or whatever, and then not a day goes by that you don't peel back another layer and you realize, okay, I just got through processing the emotion of the cheating. Now you're also telling me that they spent all our money and that, my retirement is going to be $500 a month, and they have like 3 houses, in different parts. They have like a ski chalet and a house in the Caymans and like a 60-foot boat. You're like, there's the emotions that come with that.
Oh,
It
ridiculous. Yeah.
it's ridiculous. Like I've been through rage. There's rage. I went through this last week. I had to call up a friend. I was like, anybody crosses me in the least, there's going to be a throat. Like, I'm going to throat punch somebody because I'm so angry. And I'm not the only one. So you've been through this, and you've written books about it. So how can you help us to process this and to know how to survive this emotionally?
Well, I mean, well, let's talk about the immediacy. The immediacy is understand that, in your current environment, you're being overloaded with information. And
Mhm.
Elon's putting out something like 110 posts a day, and it's
Yeah.
very targeted. He's amplifying certain voices. He's doing what a man in his position would be doing. So that's happening. You're getting a lot of information, and we really can't sort it out other than, it kind of boils down into one theme, which is you should be pissed off, and
Yeah.
I think that's for a reason, because that pain right there makes people willing to go through the adversity. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody feels like they're in a corner right now and they got to fight their way out of it. And and that's for a reason. That's for a reason. And so that's where we're at. We are in a corner. We are going to have to fight our way out of this corner. And in order
Mhm.
to win a fight, you got to throw punches. And in order to win a fight, sometimes you got to take some punches, and so that's going to happen. I think the way people get through it is back to that adage I say all the time: protect your mind, control your emotions.
Yeah.
You can't protect your mind unless you control your emotions. And though it may feel like a dire situation, at the end of the day, is there food in your fridge? Is there gas in your car? Is your rent? Is your mortgage paid? Is everybody healthy? If that's the case, then okay, cool. Then take it down a notch. Take it down a notch, because at the end of the day, you're along for the ride.
Mhm.
So don't act like you're driving the car, because you're not. You're just along for the ride. So while you're going along for the ride, you make sure that your passengers are okay. You make sure you got gas in the car. You make sure that, the windshield wipers are new in case you run into some inclement weather. Control what you can control.
Okay.
This is a big deal, because a lot of people are becoming emotionally invested in things that they really do not control, and it comes at a cost.
Mhm.
It comes
Mhm.
at a cost of not controlling the things that you can control. So control what you can control the controllables. Everything else is just a soap opera you don't have time for. So control the controllables. Everything else is just a soap opera you don't have time for. Be aware of it. Know that it's going on, but realize that you're along for the ride. You're not steering the ship anywhere right now. So
Mhm.
be supportive, be ready, make sure you're taking care of your family. Don't ignore your kids because you're so stressed out and, because something somebody did and where your money went to. That's not
Mhm.
going to help your kids. So make sure you're being a good parent, make sure you're being a good spouse, you're being a good partner to the people that you love, and really focus on that and focus on your breathing.
Mm.
Well, I was taught a long time ago, when things get rough, what you focus on is your breathing. If you're not in an environment you have to manage right away, you're just dealing with the anxiety. Well, what you focus on is your breathing. Once you get your breathing under control, your mind starts to open up a little bit. And then you identify, okay, what is manageable here? What needs to be mitigated here? What
Mhm.
can be controlled here? And then once you kind of break things into those steps, things get a lot better, because nobody, we talk about this. We talk about war, we talk about combat, right? We talk about color codes of awareness and managing your stress. If you can't stay up all the time and expect to go on a patrol and be efficiently do what you need to do on a patrol. So you got to have downtime. You got to have social time. You got to have time to rest. You got to have time to recuperate. You got to have time to
Mhm.
get your body healthy. You got to get some nourishment. You have to turn it off, because you can't stay
Right.
on all the time. So if you are looking at this situation where at some point in time you may have to be operational, quote unquote, in your own way, well, if that's the case, it's real simple. If you're not fighting, you're training. If you're not training, you're eating. If you're not eating, you're sleeping. Okay,
Mm.
that's it. It's not every situation is a situation where you're fighting. Not every is training. Not every is eating. Not every is sleeping. So pick where you're at. If it's time to eat, you eat. If it's time to sleep, you sleep. If it's time to train, you
Mhm.
train. If it's time to fight, you fight. But you can't. You got to really draw on your discipline in
Okay.
that type of situation. And it doesn't matter if it's a combat situation, doesn't matter if it's raising kids, it doesn't matter if it's dealing with social media. What most people are dealing with right now is not the changes that are happening in the government. Most people are dealing with the information they see on social media. That's what you're really dealing with.
Mhm.
uh, think about it. You don't have any effect on what's happening between Doge and USAID or the IC or whatever else they're working on, the Treasury, the judges. Yes, you can use your public support to help amplify a voice, to amplify a situation that you think needs to be affected. But if you're not doing that, then you're really just dealing with social media.
Right. Right. That makes a lot of sense. And one thing that I mentioned earlier is that I called a friend and kind of vented, and I think this is a key as well, because I see people who are upset, which is not a it's not a bad thing to be aware and to be expressing what you see. Like, I mean, and I also, what I mean by that is that, for a very long time, people were afraid to say anything about anything,
That's right.
because of the censorship and because of the cancel culture. And so I've noticed that people do have a more freedom to express what they think, and I think that's a healthy thing. However, I also think that there's a fine line there where your expression could actually maybe get you in trouble. And what I mean by that is, for example, last week when I was really having a hard time. I mean, all of it was just, the reality of it was hitting so hard, and I could have taken to social media and just gone off, right? And people do that. I see these videos, but I called a friend. And I just kind of said, can I vent? Can I just vent unabashedly, unashamedly for like 5 minutes? Like, there's going to be cuss words, right? That this is not going to be pretty, but I need to do this. Like, I've got to let the steam out so that I don't say something publicly that I'm going to regret. That
Mhm.
I don't, because, sometimes, especially if something goes viral, that is the one impression that people have of you ever. And, I've been doing this long enough to know that that's not what I wanted. But, we're all human and we're all going through these emotions, and they're very real. And so, that was a good thing. And then we kind of got through that. And I didn't end up going viral for saying things that, are kind of like, people are like, that's kind of out of character for her. So that was my strategy. Can you think of some other ways that people can do that they can kind of get through those moments? Because I think it's important that we acknowledge it, that we not bury it. But how can we get through that in an age of, publicizing everything?
Well, just don't do it. I mean, there's a fair amount of discipline, and there's a fair amount of sometimes that you're riling yourself up. You know what I
Right.
mean? And we have to acknowledge that. You're riling yourself up. How would the world be different for each person watching and listening right now if in the morning time, when you got up before work, you go in there, you pour yourself some Wheaties and you get your almond milk and you throw it on there. And while you're eating your Wheaties, you check the news, check your social media. Okay.
Mhm.
And then you turn it off and you throw it in a Faraday bag and you go to work. It's in your backpack. You go to work, and then lunchtime happens, and you get out your ham and cheese sandwich there, and you're eating your ham and cheese sandwich, and you get caught up on what's happening with the daily news. So you go through your social media, you check a few news sources. Oh, okay, yeah, that's what's happening, and then you're done with that. Lunch is over. Turn it off. Throw it in your Faraday bag. Put it back in your backpack. End of the day, you drive home. You don't sit in your car and staring at your phone before you drive home. You just drive home. Go home, greet
Mhm.
your family, greet your kids, have dinner. Everything's fine with dinner. And just like in the old days, maybe you pop up the newspaper after dinner and you want to read it, or you turn on the 6 o'clock news, get caught up on everything. Spend yourself, 20, 30 minutes doing that. And then you turn it off and you spend time with your family and you make them turn
Mhm.
their stuff off. And did you really miss anything if you live that way? Did you really
Right.
miss anything?
Right.
No. Do you really need to know what Trump said 5 minutes ago throughout your entire day? Do you
Mhm.
really need that? Or can you just get caught up periodically during the day? See, if you're not managing a social media account because you have some sort of profile or you're selling some swag or you're trying to you're trying to do something, if that's not part of your life, if you're not a content creator and that's how you make your income and things like that, you have to stay up on stuff.
Yeah.
If you're not a government policymaker, if you're not doing this stuff,
Yeah.
why are you spending all your time there just to rile yourself up and then be unproductive in other areas of your life? So
Mm.
at some point in time, we have to realize, and that's what tech discipline is. you
Okay.
know when you give yourself your little recess periods from life. I mean, you're in school and they give you a recess after you get to school, and then you'd have recess, and then you go back in the classroom, you have lunch, you have a recess, and then after lunch you'd have a recess before you went home. We have to kind of
Yeah.
have the same thing. Practicing tech discipline is so important, and also tech hygiene. What are you allowing into your mind when you're looking at social media, at your television? What are you allowing into your mind? Do we really need do you personally need to be switched on to a 24-hour a day news cycle? Do you really need that? Is that making
Mm.
your life better? Or can you just get caught up on the news and then go teach your kids how to, make Jello, whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
because all this type of behavior comes at a cost. And oftentimes it comes at a cost to your family. I mean, we all have family members out there who
Mhm.
are so enthralled with social media that we can't even get their attention for something serious. They
Right.
don't answer the phone. They don't respond to you. They're always looking down at their phone. Makes you feel neglected because you
Mhm.
are, and how many people are we doing that to? They feel
Yeah.
neglected, and we're
Yeah.
doing that to each other, and we don't need to. Again, do you really need to know what Trump said to Panama? Can you kind of get caught up on everything at the end of the
Mhm.
day and
Mhm.
then move on? Now, I know
Yeah.
people are looking for media engagement, and they want to get people enthralled into their accounts. I get that. That's a plus for people. But I'm telling everybody out there that you don't have to do it. You don't
Mhm.
have to do that. That's a behavior that is probably out of control. Tech addiction is a real thing. We
Yeah.
need to look at it like it's an addiction. It's short circuiting people's minds. It's wrecking people's relationships, and it's probably making you less productive with things like making money, like paying bills, like making sure your kids are taught that, doing their homework. All these things are so important. And I think we lose track of it because we've convinced ourselves that we have to be tethered to a 24-hour-a-day news cycle, and then we have to comment on it, and then we have to tell everybody else about it. And then, where does it end? I mean, I manage my page with a team of people, so no one person is stuck there all the time. They're working shifts, or they just come and go as they please. And I encourage every one of that team to, hey, step away. You don't need to be there right now. And if I see someone on there like all the time, I will send a message and say, hey, go take a break.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And, I think for me as a content creator, there is that sort of sense of urgency. But, one of the things I always say at the end of a show is look at the sky, touch some grass, right? Get outside. And that's something that I try to do. And, with the things that I've been through recently with having the stress of having, our dad have a stroke, and he was in the hospital, and it was a 5-week ordeal where a lot of things came to a grinding halt. And my stress level was really high. And it wasn't so much about what was going on with him health wise, is just dealing with the system, right? Dealing with the hospital, dealing with the the jackassery overall of that system, and confronting it day in and day out. And just having the vigilance, and then becoming almost like an HR manager of all of the people involved in his care. So just added layer of stress. And one of the things that I have started going back to the gym, and to manage my stress. And one of the things I do is we have a sauna at the gym, and I have a rule where I don't take my phone out at the gym. Like I don't have it with me. I'm not doing like a phone workout. And I actually put it in a locker that's outside of the locker room. The phones aren't allowed in there anyway, but it's just like when I walk in the gym, the phone gets put away. I'm not listening to anything. I'm just fully present at the gym. I'm fully present when I get in the sauna. I'm fully present. So that's sort of like my carve out bubble. And it's really been very helpful because, I have some health challenges that I'm working on myself. And I know that I have to be here 100% health wise for my family. And if I'm not carving out those things, if I'm not taking time away, even as a content creator, then I get into big trouble because like you're saying, I lose perspective. And then the people in my life lose out. And I'll tell you, everybody's better off when I go and spend that time doing those things and refreshing and renewing without my phone. That's 100% better for everybody. And so I think what I hear you saying is that everybody has to make a decision. It's like, it's up to you to decide, to take the personal responsibility about what you personally do, to practice tech discipline, to practice tech hygiene. And it's very interesting because I see people sometimes like in the locker room at the gym, there's big signs that say absolutely no phones, right? And people will have their phones out. And if you confront, people are in the locker room, like with no clothes on, and somebody has their phone out. You're like, stop, but you confront
them. And they
them.
know they should stop, but they don't because they're addicted. I am probably the worst message returner on the planet. I really am.
Yeah.
People try to get in touch with me all the time. And I'll wake up to 40 messages and I'll be like, okay, I'll get through these, and then you got DMs and you got everything. I'm horrible about returning messages.
Yeah.
It's not because I'm extremely irresponsible. It's because I got other things to do, and I get caught up when I can. And I don't let that limit what I'm trying to do efficiently. Right now, General Flynn and I were in the middle of writing a new book. And so I will go semi-dark on everybody for months, when we're in this kind of mode, because I have to dedicate all my synapses to that one thing.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
it has to be that way. And so I isolate myself. I hide, from 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm
Mhm,
just locked in a room, and it
mhm.
has to be that way. And I think it should be that way for a lot of people,
Yeah.
if they're doing what they need to be doing in life. If that's what you do, whatever your craft is, whatever your skill is, whatever your
Mhm,
job is, and if you're not raising your family, if you're not being with your spouse, you should be productive. And if I encourage everybody to do this during waking hours, turn your phone off for 2 hours and
mhm,
leave it in the other room. And if after about 7 minutes you start making excuses for why you need to be on the phone, well, that
mhm.
sounds a lot like addiction, right?
Mm,
I remember when I was heavily addicted to opiates, I'd get to the VA, I'd be calling the VA 2 days in advance. Hey, you're going to have it ready when I get there. Oh, yeah, we got it. It's in the system. It's in the system. Okay, good. It's in the system. And then what time's the pharmacy? It was 9 o'clock. Okay, I'm down there at 8:50, pulling
mm,
my little number so I can get it. They would give me that. They would give me that Vicodin or oxycodone or morphine or whatever was the flavor of the month, and I would grab that bottle because I would run out literally at the time. I needed a refill. There was no waiting, and a lot of
mhm,
times the worse it got, I would be running out a day before. So now I'm geeking, right? And I
mhm,
would get that bottle and it's got that red security tape across the lid. And I would challenge myself once I got it from the pharmacist to get to the front door or to get to my car or to get home without taking a dose.
mm.
I never once made it. I never
Wow.
once made it. Well, if you are dealing with your phone in the same way, if you can't just put it away and not go to it, well, that sounds a lot like addiction. And if you've
Mhm.
dealt with addiction, you know what it looks like in all forms. So I encourage
Wow.
people to acknowledge to themselves that, yes, you have an addiction and you need to
Mhm.
set some boundaries. Otherwise, things start going awry. That's just the way it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. 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 Wow. It's this is very helpful. And it's simple, right? It's simple. Sometimes it's not easy, but what you're saying is very simple. Just put the phone away, practice the tech discipline, and also, uh, discipline your mind, protect your mind. Somebody mentioned in the chat that their blood pressure is up, that they're not sleeping, right? Because of the things that we see happening with our government. And I would reiterate to everybody what Boone said, which is that it is there are many, many things that are outside of our control. And so as we go through this, focus on what you can control. And it ends up being a very, very small sphere of things, right? It's just like I can control when I get up in the morning. I can control what I do from the minute I get up, whether it's, making the bed, fixing food, like really pretty basic things. And keeping my house in order, keeping my bills paid, those types of things, returning calls, mailing a letter, whatever it is that's on your list of things you can control. And, for me, going to the gym, making that decision, making that commitment to get there, even if it means I just take a walk while I'm there, walk a mile, walk 2 miles, um, just because I know that's where I'm unplugged, right? And so it has to be your thing that you choose and you take personal responsibility for it. And another thing I would say too is like give yourself grace, but don't rely on excuses all of the time. There's a fine line between saying, I made a mistake, and then just repeating the same thing over and over every day and expecting the different results, right?
People are going to have to practice getting off their tech. That's why I just say
Yeah.
start with 2 hours. Yeah, I mean, really, two
Mhm.
hours. You don't have a bathroom that needs to be cleaned. You don't have a garage that needs to be reorganized. You don't have to look at to be able to spend some time with your kid and go throw the ball around from it. That nobody has that, so they have nothing to do but be online. No, you have that stuff. It's being
Mhm.
neglected because you're giving yourself an excuse you're procrastinating and you're saying it's okay because You're being productive. You're checking on things. What are
Mm,
you checking on? Is Trump going to call you in 10 minutes and ask you for your opinion based upon an executive order he just wrote? No, you're not.
right.
You're just there to churn yourself up. Turn it off. Turn it off, because
Interesting.
you're making yourself susceptible to really bad things, and
Yeah.
it's just not
Interesting.
necessary. And it's crazy. I talk to these people, and if we took out the term social media and we put in the word alcohol, everybody would go, "Oh yeah, that's what you have to do. You got to set limits and boundaries, and you can't be drinking all day long." And that's ridiculous.
Mm,
It would be ridiculous. Everybody would understand it. But when you turn
hmm
that mirror around, you say, "Okay, now let's pull that word alcohol and put the word social media in the middle. What now? Can you look at yourself?
hmm
Can you look at yourself and
Wow.
realize that maybe there's a problem here and a little better?"
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because, you see you see people sometimes out with their kids, and they're sitting in a park or whatever, and the kids are playing and they're on their phones, right? And and yet they'll say, my kids don't get screen time or whatever. But one thing I've learned about kids is that they don't do what you say, they do what you do. And so if you are a parent or a
Yeah.
grandparent, you're setting an example for them. Like, this is my priority. This is what I'm spending my time on. So I mean, I love having you on the show because you challenge me, you challenge us. And I know it's not easy because you personally have overcome a lot of these things in your own life. And so you're speaking from experience to us. And that's something that is invaluable, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time and also sharing with us the things that you've learned. It's there's nothing better than experience for to help us through this. So I appreciate it.
And we help each other. We help each other through these experiences, and hopefully that's more
Yeah.
positive than everybody being isolated and siloed into
Mhm.
their own mind that's connected to a device, and
Yeah.
it's literally controlling
Yeah.
your emotions
Yeah.
all day long. And I mean, who would willingly do that? Who would willingly walk into a room of people and say, "I'm going to let you guys all control my emotions for the next 17 hours"? Nobody would do that, but you volunteer to do it every time you step on social media, and you're there for 10
Mm.
hours, 15 hours. What did you really get out of it other than a bunch of mental stuff you probably didn't need? Could you have learned the same information, the news events that happened in that day, in 20 minutes, in an hour?
Mhm.
Yeah, you could have. You absolutely could have. There would be no change. The only thing that would be different is you'd be more productive in life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. One other question, speaking of controlling your emotions. Every all of us have associates, family members, friends who are wigging out, but for different reasons, right? They're
Right.
buying into the narrative that this is literally the end of the country, that America is being overtaken by Doge, by Elon Musk, that there's another insurrection going on, whatever it is they think. What are some practical things that people can do when they are encountering those conversations, or people who are well, here's a perfect example. I had somebody tell me last week that a business associate, actually a business mentor that they had been working with for over a year very closely, found out who she voted for, and broke off the relationship with just unceremoniously with an email, because of politics, right? And it was very hurtful for my friend because they had worked in the trenches in business, with this mentorship, and it was a very valuable relationship. And because of the perception that this person has about President Trump's stance on one particular issue that really isn't even accurate, that person broke off, just completely cut off the relationship. And that's an extreme example, but we see that. We see these extremes. How
We've seen it a
Yeah.
lot over the years, and this is where I break into song and dance about frame
Mhm.
of reference, right? We different frame of reference, and I've seen these things get, turned in not so good ways, and we kind of really need to step back and evaluate the people around us based on their frame of reference, not our own. Like I'll oftentimes, if I think I'm going to get into a heated
Mhm.
argument with somebody, I'll tell them, hey, before we go into this, let me explain something. Before we start, I'm going to try and understand what you're saying and understand your frame of reference more than I tried to convince you of
Mhm.
mine. That immediately settles everything down. And I mean what I
Mhm.
say. I really do. I do want to understand other people's frame of reference. I'll give you a couple of examples. I got this great friend of mine. He was telling me there was this gal that somehow they worked together, and they just had different views. And they did a very adult thing. They said, hey, let's meet for coffee and talk about this thing. And they did. And I think they're talking about socialized
Mhm.
healthcare. I think that was the thing. And my buddy says, I don't need the government to take care of me. I started working a
Mhm.
job when I was 17. I joined the military. I went to OCS. I got done with that. I run a business, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, okay. And then this lady, it's her turn to talk. And she says, well, when I was 3 years old, my father left us and we didn't have
Mhm.
anything. My mother couldn't work enough, and she was estranged from her family. And if it wasn't, for social welfare programs, we wouldn't have made it. And I know there's other people out there like
Yeah.
that. They come and immediately he starts going into song and dance about, people see things differently because they've had different experiences. I'll give something that's even probably a little bit closer to home. I've seen this happen numerous times, like firsthand. There are folks, you could see them driving down the street and they'd see a Black Lives Matter sticker
Mhm.
on a car. And the next thing you know, they're practically in a rage over the person. They didn't signal, oh yeah. And next thing you know, here comes the plethora of
Yeah.
insults and calling the person a Marxist and a racist and everything else. When you don't know that person in that car. They might have a biracial marriage and have a biracial child, an interracial marriage, have a biracial child, and they just believe in equal rights.
Mhm.
Well, I think equal rights are a good thing. I don't think things are on a continuum. I don't think they may not be full blown Marxist. They just might believe in equal rights, and this is their way of
Mhm.
expressing it for a reason. So don't judge them way over here until you know
Mhm.
they're way over there. And I'll pull it back again. We saw people. This probably speaks to your friend, a Trump bumper sticker, MAGA bumper sticker, the MAGA hat, and people immediately go fascist, racist. They've really gone to that extreme. But maybe that person with that bumper sticker just believes in a strong national
Mhm.
defense. And I think we all agree that a strong national defense
Mhm.
is a good thing. So, things are on this continuum. What you're seeing is the response is a polarized response.
Yeah.
All right, a polarizing response, because polarization is intentionally created in psychological operations, because in psychological operations, if I can get you to that polarized point, you're going to turn off your critical thinking skills, and you're going to put yourself in a state of mind that feels like it's life or death. So polarization is really most of the time a manufactured sense of life and death, and that's what people are doing to themselves right now on social media. They're manufacturing a sense of life
Mhm.
and death when it's not. We're not there. Bombs are not dropping.
Mhm.
Okay, we do not have adversarial aircraft
Right.
over our skies that are doing that's not happening. There's nobody's running down your street, calling in artillery on your home.
Mhm.
That's not happening. You're not in a life or death situation. You just feel
Yeah.
like you are. So we've got to pull back that polarization, because that goes to bad places, especially within psychological operations. If I can get you to polarize and then I can get you to tribalize, well, then I'm going to pull you into dehumanize, and now you're going to start killing people.
Mm.
So we've got to dial that whole thing
Mhm.
way, way back, because it leads to bad places. Your friend has somebody who has gotten
Yeah.
into this polarized state of mind, the manufactured sense of life and death, and they're actually looking at your friend like they are responsible for their potential
Yeah.
death.
Yeah. Yeah.
Way, way, totally contrived, way out of
Mhm.
line. but you'll never be able to convince them of that, because once you get to that polarized state, critical thinking goes out the window. You're emotional. That's why I say protect your mind, control your emotions. You control your emotions, look at things critically, and then decide, is this something you want to dedicate your
Right,
emotions
right.
to? It has to be with
Yeah, and
intention.
it was interesting because my friend was just gutted, because she doesn't really even like, she doesn't even talk about politics that much. I think I don't even know how the mentor concluded where she was. Maybe she had liked something on social media. Maybe you know what I'm saying? That there was something that this person noticed that she did, and I think that they actually extrapolated meaning out of it that wasn't even there. Um, right? It was a coincidental
Exactly.
thing, that just the timing of it, I think, led this person to this conclusion, and it and it was interesting because I think it took a few months to build up. And so, they never approached my friend, never made a comment, and then out of the blue sent the letter, boom, relationship over because of this and this, and it just she was gobsmacked, really. And there was no room for dialogue. There was no room for understanding because of what this.
The polarization point
Yeah,
had already been made. There's not going to be
yeah,
any conversation. That person is looking at your friend like they are an instrument there to
yeah,
do them harm
yeah.
based upon a
Yeah,
light.
literally Hitler, and I was trying to explain it to her, right? Because this is not her area. I mean, like, again, she's busy, she's running a family, she's running a business, she's, like, just not spending that much time on social media, and I had to walk her through and say, "This is what happened to this person. This is how they got there." And unfortunately, like you said, there's that toothpaste isn't going back in the tube, especially not you. Like, you're not going to get them to that place. And someone else maybe could intervene, but whatever you say isn't going to matter. And that's the sad part, you know?
I've got a real good friend of mine, a similar situation, friends for a long time, done events together and everything. And I really don't know what happened, but I get a message from a common friend of ours saying, "Hey, you got to check on someone there, so and so. There's a problem. What's the problem? Oh, they think that you are advocating for this, that, and the other thing." Well, long story short, he had gone over to Ukraine and he was traveling around Ukraine as part of a show that he was doing. So he got to really know the
Mhm.
Ukrainian people and took on their cause. And that influenced him, obviously, and it would anybody. I don't care what side of
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
battle you're on. If you're with the people that are going through that suffering, you bond. There's
yeah.
trauma bonding, right? And so, and this guy was an Army veteran. And so it was one of those things that we had a common bond around, veteran advocacy and everything else. And then he had taken off and went to go to the research for this show. And then he had trauma bonded with these folks. And in his mind, he started creating a situation where I was opposing him. I was opposing something that he believed so strongly in, and it was very personal. And we've talked since then. We've kind of worked
Mhm.
some things through, but we really need to go spend some bro time together to get it
Mhm.
worked out. And I'm
Yeah,
very happy for the fact that we still do communicate, but we didn't communicate for 6, 8 months,
mhm.
maybe longer. And I just figured he was off doing his thing and I was off doing my thing, and we'll
Yeah.
reconnect at some point. But so these
Mhm.
things happen, and all sides. I'm not talking anybody's personal side, but if you value somebody, you gotta dial it down,
Mhm.
assess what the frame of reference is, show a little empathy, show a little respect, and then that hopefully, if that person is in that, hopefully they're in the state of mind that they can respond the same way. But you want to model and mentor the behavior that you want to see
Mm.
coming at you.
Mhm.
You know, so model, mentor that, and that helps a lot. So I would encourage a friend to realize, you know, that the kind of bits and pieces of what went on was this person is probably being inundated with messages,
Yeah.
okay, and they're they're emotional about it. They're not using good tech hygiene, good tech discipline. And now there's a casualty
Mhm.
involved. And as much as we're talking about your friend, I'm talking to everybody in your audience. How many people have you done that
Mm.
to? How many people have you done that? How many people have done that to you? Now, if you don't think that's a concerted effort to degrade the unity of our society, I've got news for you. That's exactly what you do to degrade the
Mm.
unity in a society. That's what class warfare does. That's what a lot of things do. They create these divisions. So don't get played by the game, and understand
Mhm.
what the game is. This is the game. We wrote all these books here to expose you to the game so you don't get played. And so you can teach other people, hey, look right here, 3-17, this is exactly what we're doing to each other right now.
Mhm.
Or 5-14, this is what I saw last week at work. It's very relative to everybody's lives. So this is the fifth generation warfare environment. It's not just about, it's not bigger than the cognitive battle space is a
Mhm.
real thing. You're being tricked, you're being manipulated. People around you are doing the same thing, and they're taking it out on you. And you're probably taking it out on other
Right.
people. You got to stop. I'll give you a great one. The vax. All right. How many times have you seen somebody go, oh, so-and-so died of a heart attack? Well, did they get vaxxed? Well, yeah. Well, the first thing is, did they get vaxxed? Not, oh my gosh, how's their
Mhm.
family? You know what I mean? And then I see people take it even further and go, well, they deserved it. No, they didn't deserve to get tricked by their country
Right.
and die. They didn't deserve that. Okay. They were a victim as much as everybody else. Yes, they may have been
Mhm.
an asshole at a certain time, but what was causing that? And so we got to step back. And I see people do it now. You talk about the vax injured, and people want to isolate the vax injured. Well, if you were anti-vax, guess who your best ally is right now? People who were vax injured who could
Yeah.
talk about being
Yeah.
vax injured. That's your best ally, and
Yeah,
you're
you're shaming
isolating
them.
them.
Yeah. I've seen this
You're
with the
shaming them.
disclosures that are coming out about, what our government did. And I put up a post on social media about this, just saying kind of speaking for every man, right? With the realization that of what they've done. Like, we trusted them with this, we trusted them with this. And it was very interesting because some of the responses were, well, that was your first mistake, was trusting them. And I'm thinking, okay, you're literally victim blaming right now, because the truth is, even people who have had sort of an underlying distrust of the government, nobody knew the extent of it. Nobody knew that they were spending $50 million on, like, LGBTQ books in Pakistan. Like, crazy stuff like that. Nobody knew the extent to which charities and NGOs were just hemorrhaging money, taxpayer money, stealing it.
And let me ask you this. I'm gonna put a whole
Sure,
different
yeah.
light on that situation, because immediately people would go, "Oh, why would we spend LGBT money on LGBTQ in a foreign country?" Well, first of all, it's Pakistan, okay, and whether or not they are going to be an ally now or in the future is kind of a thing. So, would you want to create tree,
Yeah.
and by amplifying a voice that is not the majority? See,
Mhm.
these are the games that get played, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you probably would in some sort of strategic soft war fashion, you
Yeah.
probably would do that. But guess what? We were doing the same thing to ourselves. Therein lies the problem, right? Therein
Mhm.
lies the problem. So there's a lot of different ways to look at all these things. And I'm not saying that program needed to exist or it was even effective.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
I can admit that I don't know. But I know that spending money on certain programs to create division in other places is that's a soft power strategy,
Mhm. Mhm.
and there's reasons for
Yeah.
those things.
Right, right, and I
Not
think
I'm
I
not that I'm defending it. I'm just saying I'm giving
No,
people
no,
another
I
perspective
understand,
frame of
yeah.
reference.
And this is something that Mike Benz talks about, and I think if you haven't heard Tucker Carlson's interview with him, where they go through a lot of these details and why these programs exist and the rationale behind it, again, it's not necessarily excusing it or even advocating for it, but it gives you a framework for understanding what's behind it. But let's talk about that for just a second, because I think that, you mentioned phase two. On the one hand, right now, the knee-jerk reaction of Americans is cut it all off. Like, just stop it. Stop, like, cut off USAID, never give them another dime. None of these programs should have any money. That's the emotional knee-jerk reaction to this. However, you mentioned earlier before we came on the show that there is actual value in some of the programs. And so I think for people, it is unrealistic to expect that all of it will go away forever.
No, it's going to come back. It's going to be
Yeah,
evaluated, for its efficiency, and then certain things will come back, and hopefully the abused portions will not come back. But the door swings both ways before it comes to center, right? And
mhm,
so
mm,
everything went way too far one way, and now everything's been cut off, so it's swinging back the other way.
yeah,
And at some point in time, it'll recalibrate and we'll get centered again. But all these things have to happen, otherwise we go bankrupt. And things that
yeah,
people have just kicked the can down the road too many times.
yeah,
General Flynn talks about this, when he wanted to audit the black budgets, and that's why he got railroaded, because he says, I want
yeah,
to audit these black budgets. And the wrath came upon him as soon as he said that. Like,
yeah.
how dare you even think of such a thing? He's
Mhm.
told me, he says, some of these black budgets been around since Eisenhower, and nobody's ever looked at it twice.
You're
Like,
right,
I
right.
I want to know what's going on with that thing. Like, let's see
Yeah.
some measures of effectiveness and reevaluate, because it's
Mhm.
and he's told me, and he said it publicly, that there are black budget programs that have more money than most countries behind them.
Right, right. And that's and when
And
the
nobody
when
has
the
ever audited or reevaluated it. Like,
yeah,
I
and when
think we,
the
yeah,
yeah, the
it's
number two, the assistant sec def for under Biden was being interviewed and basically saying, when they were talking about the fact that the Pentagon couldn't pass an audit, she was trying to justify it by saying, like, we don't have line items. And so, it's not that we can't pass an audit, it's that basically she was saying, like, there's nothing to audit because we're not keeping track of this stuff, which was, for a rational human being, that's all the more case for an audit. Right? Like, the fact that you're not itemizing these things is the biggest, like, that's a bigger red
and why
flag.
aren't they itemized? Because nobody
Right,
wants to know where that money went. Because
exactly.
someone
So
will be accountable on another level.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
today's ally is tomorrow's adversary, and
yeah,
vice versa in many ways. I mean, we were allied with Russia, with the Soviet Union in World War II. Well, not anymore. That
yeah.
didn't continue. We were allied with China. I mean, when China was a democracy, we were allied with China. That this
Mm,
was another, and that by and large, the Chinese people want the same thing back, but the CCP, being an illegal government, is standing in the way of that. And they're
yeah.
trying to hold on to it every way they can. And I think they're close to throwing in the towel on that. So it's one of those things that relationships change, just like people's relationships, they change over time. And I don't think anybody wants to be accountable for the money they're giving to their ally today that may turn into their adversary tomorrow, and
Mhm.
vice versa. I think
Yeah,
in a political environment, that's a suicide. That's a suicide. That's the thing that's going to
yeah.
bite you in the ass. And so they protect themselves by saying, I don't know, plausible deniability, right? I don't know. I didn't know that was going there.
Right, that makes sense. And I think this is why we're seeing the level of panic we're seeing in DC. I think there's a lot of people that know a lot, and they're realizing that those layers are being peeled back to where the emperor has no clothes, and they've known this for quite some time, and they've been able to protect it because of the what Mike Benz calls the blob, right? The structure of the blob. It's a self-protective, self-regulating entity. Some people call it the deep state. I think it's bigger than that. Uniparty. There's
And
it's a
how much foreign
multifaceted.
infiltration has occurred inside the Uniparty? A lot. There's a
Yeah.
lot of foreign influence there, and that's what, when I talk about that doors that door has got to swing back. You got to cut off the funding. You got to expose the people that have done this, and this all comes together. And we're going to have to go through it, because what's going to happen. Like, I know what's going to happen at some point in time. Someone's going to say, Trump cut off the money here, and that caused this thing. And the American people are suffering. And then that debate is going to be heavily fueled, and you're going to see that in Act 2 and Act 3. So it's
I already have one example of that. I
Yeah.
have one that's going to come. A friend of mine was telling me, she said, look, I am all for cutting like the education department, right? The DEI, things like this. She said, however, she has 2 special needs sons. And she has been a huge advocate for them. She's, one graduated, the other one is about to graduate next year. They've made huge inroads. She said, but there is going to come a time in this process where some of those programs will get cut. She said, I have no doubt. And there's going to be suffering, because she said, not every parent is like her. They don't know how to advocate. And she said there are a lot of parents who don't even know yet that they need to advocate. And, kids will slip through the cracks. She said, we already lost a lot of kids because of COVID. And, but she, she's seeing the writing on the wall for that's going to be fallout. And, unfortunately, I think that it's kind of like when you're looking at the fallout of war, when you're looking at casualties, you can only mitigate so much, right? You can plan for different scenarios. You can role play, you can war game it. And then when the reality starts to hit in, and, the actual on the ground warfare starts to take place, there's always something that you didn't account for, right? That you can't control. And so I think preparing for phase 2 and phase 3 and beyond is really important, because we are going to be faced with these situations where somebody comes at us and says, hey, your guy Trump cut the money and this happened to my kid or my nephew or my grandmother because of him.
Or me. They're gonna say he cut it and it happened to me. And I mean, this is we can expect that, and it's like looking at surgery. Surgery is uncomfortable, it's painful, but it might save your life.
Right. And we're already seeing that with the jobs, right? The people that are going to get reduction in force, they're getting these early resignations, that kind of thing. It's interesting to see, because in the real world, outside of government, everybody's always ready to be fired or to get a pink slip. Like, the minute you get a job, you got to update your resume. That's just a given. So it's very interesting seeing the reactions of the people in the government who somehow thought that they had a forever parachute. That did none of the private sector rules applied to them. And now they're being treated,
and they've been
like
trained
private.
to believe that way. They've been trained to
Yes.
believe that way. That's been conditioned that way.
Yeah.
And that's another factor. But we're definitely going to have this is not going to be comfortable. We're just in Act 1 doing. There's a group of people going the rah rah rah, and there's another group of people going wait. And that's all going to have to get sorted out. I had a friend of mine reach out to me, and upset. Very anti-Russia, and said, hey, they just killed this program at DOJ, and it's the same program that seized assets of Russian oligarchs that were doing bad things, and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I can understand that, but what's probably going to happen is they probably shut down the unit, because they're going to consolidate units, and this will fall under something else. I guarantee you, because her thing was, look, Trump is helping Putin. No,
Right.
I don't think that's going on. I think what's more realistic is they're going to consolidate certain units together for more efficiency. Nobody's going to, give anybody a pass. I don't think that's going on. But I mean, she was very upset about it. And it's one of those things where things are going to get cut. Things are going to get consolidated. There's probably going to be a different way things are being done based on efficiency. There's going to be a tech aspect to it, but there will be a transition. Again, bring it back to our conversation. We're in a renaissance period. What connects the old to the new? And during that period, a lot of things are going to happen. Just
Yeah.
protect your mind, control your emotions as we go through it, control what you can control. And
Yeah.
the rest, that's what you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
And if you're worried you're going to take a hit on making money or something, some sort of funds that's coming in, well, don't sit on social media and bitch about it. Go out and find another income stream. Because if you know that's coming, why would you stand in the same place that you are? Prepare for it. Go out there. If you think, if you need to supplement your income by having a garden, by doing some different type of work, or whatever it is, you've got your life. You know what your skills and capabilities are, and your strengths are, and how you can leverage them. And we're in just that kind of thing right now. But don't just sit. If you see the storm coming, do what you got to do to take cover and survive it.
So true. Yeah. I mean, yeah, again, going back to these government employees, it's like, I think some of them truly, again, going back to like the Hillary campaign, they never thought she would lose. I think they were convinced that there was no way Trump was going to win this time. They didn't have to worry that, they already heard rumblings that he was going to cut the budget, that they might get reduced out of their job, relocated, whatever. But I think a lot of them are caught flat-footed because they didn't think they ever needed to make a resume again. And now the shock is set in that I either have to take this offer, which they missed the boat on that, and now my entire department is going to be eliminated. And it's like they're in denial. So this is going to be a time, I guess, just to put on your big girl pants and figure it out, right? And
right, and also just kind of take it all in, because for the rest of our lives, we're going to debate. Someone's going to debate. It's going to go down in textbooks. It's going to go down in documentaries. What happened and how did it turn out? And there's going to be lessons learned from it. And you're living through it. But this is a subject that will go on, and it will be reviewed and assessed for the next 50 years.
Yeah. It's like the Margaret Thatcher era on steroids.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and that was hard. That was a very difficult time for people. But we will get through it, and as a nation, we're incredibly resilient people. That's how we got this far, and so I want to encourage everybody. There's so much to take away from this conversation. There's so much, and there's a comment that just came up on the social media that I think is a good note to end on, because it's a good one, right? This is a good outcome. So let's focus on more stories like this. This is a good one. She says, my son, who is 36, is disabled. Right after November 5th, he called me out of the blue and told me he wanted, oh, I'm sorry, I misread this. Oh, this is a bad one, that her son cut her off. That he just assumed, he made assumptions. I'm sorry, I thought that he had rekindled. Well, let's just pray that he does. Let's pray that he does rekindle the relationship, or that there's a way for him to see through this. Because I think this happened to a lot of people. I apologize, Sonia, I misread it.
When I was growing up, they used to say there's two things you don't talk about at a party: politics and religion.
Yeah.
These days, that's the only thing people talk about, is politics and religion. So
yeah,
maybe we need to learn from our own recent past, and just focus on people being good to each other. And what you do in the voting booth is your business. It's nobody else's business. And respect other people's privacy in the same way. I think that would be an easy thing to do, and I think it got us by for a long time. And we'll see how it goes. But it is a different world, and but we'll get through it. We always do. Protect, control your emotions, control what you can control, and the rest of it is just a soap opera you don't have time for.
Exactly. Boone, how can people follow you and find out more about you and what you do?
Don't leave me alone. I don't want anything to do with anybody. I'm just kidding. feel free. I do enjoy engaging with people, but I also, I set my own priorities, and I'm never ignoring anybody. I don't want anybody to feel neglected, but you can always contact me on X, and I'm on most of the social media platforms.
Mhm.
I don't always check the mail, but I do check in quite regularly. But yeah, feel free to follow me, and I talk about this kind of stuff all the time when
Yeah.
I go on podcasts. I think it's important. You're never going to see me be the guy beating the drum on some dogma that's currently current. It's just not really my way of doing things.
And here's here's part of the set of your books, the Fifth Generation Citizens Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. This is the role of the church in fifth generation warfare. I do encourage everybody to get Boone and General Flynn's books. If you want to know more about the topics that we're talking about today, that is going to help you navigate and understand some of this. And as always, please go to my website, marygracemedia.com, to get more content from me, to get on my mailing list, to know when I go live, and also to support my America First partners that I work with that help keep the Mary Grace Show going. Thank you again for being here today, Boone Cutler. It's very, very great to have you here. To everyone who's listening, I want to let people know, if you head over to X in about 15 minutes, I am doing a Spaces with Praying Medic, one of your favorite people. And we're doing a practice space. And so if you've ever wanted to raise your hand and talk on Spaces, this is a perfect one. We're giving people a chance to do that because we want to we want to learn some of the logistics of running a space. And that's going to be on my X page, and that's at Mary Grace TV. So that's starting at 8 p.m. Eastern tonight. If you're watching the replay, you might miss it. This is Wednesday, what is today? The 12th, the Wednesday, the 12th of February. That's when we're doing this. So go over to X at Mary Grace TV or to Praying Medic's profile, and you can join our space. We're just going to be kind of shooting the breeze and practicing the logistics and the mechanics of running a space. And you may get a chance. It's kind of like calling into the radio. So kind of fun. Thank you again, Boone Cutler, for being here. We really do appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. Always learned so much. I always have so much food for thought. And after my space tonight, that phone is going off. So
Good.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the other thing. Don't keep the phone by your bed. Just put it away at night. Don't go to bed looking at the phone. That's
if you're not a Navy SEAL that may be called into action at any given time, you could probably tell. If you're not a doctor waiting to go do like a heart surgery at any given time, you probably don't need to have it on you all the time.
Yeah. When my dad was first home, I kept the phone with me because I had to keep track of the security cameras and all that. And now we're in a different spot. And so I don't have to keep the phone by my side all night. And I know we're all better for it. So,
right.
Yeah. So thank you again, everybody. We will see you back here. We do have some good shows coming up. I have a very special show coming this Friday at 4 p.m. And make sure you're on the mailing list so that you get notified about that. It's going to be a really good show. We will see you back here on the Mary Grace Show. Everybody have a great evening. Go outside, look at the sky, touch some grass, and feel the sun on your face. Have a great day, everybody.